Yo, I put a 15mm twin cam Del Sol rear sway bar in this car. That was one of the first things I did to this thing because it had a horrible amount of understeer in it. You'd have to be some grandma driver to get by with the way this thing handles from the factory. It's got a 22mm sway bar in the front, which is nice. It's good. It's about where it should be, but the rear having nothing back here, the understeer is just terrible on these cars. So I put this in and it steered a lot better. You know, it was a little less understeer. Then I put these Coney Yellows and ground control shocks in them. I found those used and dumped those in, and it handles way better than that even, but it's still got a little too much understeer. And I've been looking around for a while for a cheap deal, and I finally found one. I found this on eBay for a dirt amount of cheap. Chinese. Couldn't believe how cheap it was. It's 24mm. So this should have about 700 pounds more torsion than a 15mm sway bar. It's kind of nice too. It's got these are rubber instead of polyurethane. Polyurethane bushings are a lot cheaper. Basically polyurethane is just like a two-part epoxy kind of thing. Two-part. You just put 2 parts of crap in it and mix it up and throw it in a mold, and it's really hard and they wear out fast. I was kind of amazed that these are rubber, which is pretty cool. These are probably rebranded and reboxed and called other things and sold for more money. And I had to get a frame brace too, a support brace, which was dirt cheap. Couldn't believe how cheap this stuff was. So yeah, one of those. It says JDM on it. It comes with all the bolts and the hardware and no instructions, which is fine. I don't need them. But these bolts are wrong. I need 10 by 125 bolts. And there's a funny grade on these. The grade says FD. I don't even know what that means. It's probably a 10-9 bolt. 8/8s are not good enough. They got to be 10-9, which is a grade 8 bolt. Trying to find these is kind of difficult, unless you're me. I'm just going to use these. I dug them up. They're D16 head bolts. They're a little bit longer, but they should work just fine. These are torque to yield bolts. They're not marked at all, but torque to yield bolts are usually 12.9 grade. They're grade 10. So it's a way higher grade than 10-9. So these should be fine. I'm going to use them. And anything to lower my understeer a little more would be great. In fact, I like oversteer. I'm used to old rear-wheel drive cars that oversteered like crazy. So this should be a really cool upgrade. This sway bar kit came with Heim joints too. I don't like these. I got regular end links for an SI. For a 2000 Civic Si, which are way nicer than this stuff. So I don't even think I'm going to open this bag. Them came with the sway bars, and then here I got these little brackets that go behind the frame. The reason why you need one of these too is because the frame is so thin on this car that if you use a heavy sway bar, you could rip the 2 bolts for the sway bar right out. You have to have this. I think the Type R is the only car that came with a 22mm sway bar, and the Type R has a thicker frame in the back, so they can support it, but this one can't. So I gotta have this. I think everything on here for me to take off is 14mm sway bar length. I'm going to scrape a little of this undercoating off. It's kind of fun. This metal's not even flat anymore. It bent it a little bit. Now the control arms are going to move and I'm not going to like it, I'm sure. These factory bolts for the lower control arm, they are shouldered a little bit and these aren't. And if you buy aftermarket bolts, they're not going to be shouldered either, so there's really nothing I can do about that. And once the suspension settles, it's not going to move. It'll just kind of stay in the same spot, so I'm not really too worried about it. These are cut out all kind of funny. I don't know why, because they fit up here either way. I'm going to put them in this way with the bevels in just because there's 3 different size bolts for this too. This is the middle length bolt. The longer one goes on the top. And the short one goes on the bottom. This goes in the recessed hole, of course. Well, that was fun. Let's try that again. I'm going to start these long bolts on the top. I'm going to try to get these started. I think I got it. Yeah, the head length is really nice for those. Wow. Oops. That wasn't cool. Try to get a little alignment punch in here. These are 12 millimeters. Amazingly enough, it doesn't rattle around too much. It's got a little movement to it. That's to be expected, I think. I might as well tighten the control arm bolts down first. I'm going to load this lower control arm. Get as far out to the outside of the tire as I can. It's kind of coming off of my twin post. Ooh. I think that's as far as I'm going to want to go. Just to see, I'm going to yank on this control arm just a little bit so I can get as much negative camber as possible. I'm going to torque this down to 40 foot-pounds. I'll go a little more. 45. I'm probably going to want to check those too after I drive it for a while. It wouldn't surprise me if they loosened up a little bit. The stock torque on these head bolts is 49 foot-pounds. Isn't that special? I'm going to take a wild guess and say these should get torqued to 14 foot-pounds. I'm just going to do these 2 bottom ones. Maybe I'll do them 15. That feels good. Now I can take these top ones back out. They got 2 bolt holes on the sway bar too. I'm gonna use the inside one because it's all about leverage. The outside one, you'll get less tension on it. So I want the most out of it, so I'm gonna use the inside hole. I suppose I could put a little silicone paste on this bar too. If you put any silicone paste on here, you just need a little bit. You barely even see it. You gob it on and most of it will just wash off and make a big mess. So it doesn't really matter. Looks like the bend is farther down than my factory one too, so I probably have a little more clearance. Yeah, this thing was listed for an Integra or an older Honda, but I figured it'd fit because I just took one out that was from a Del Sol Integra. Gotta do a little needle nose vice grip action on the inside of these links. I don't ever torque check those, I just get them good and tight so they don't loosen up. After putting this thing in, I loaded my suspension again because that stud on that link just didn't look right. And I was right, it was hitting. So I had to cut a little bit of it off. And now it's not going to hit and rattle and make noise. And this suspension is dialed in. The only other thing that I would ever do to this thing is get wider tires. And that's it. Okay, bye.